70,000 men died in a single afternoon, not a war, not a year. One day, the 2nd of August 216 BC, on a dusty plain called Cannae, that is more men than the entire British army lost on the first day of the Somme, and it happened without a single machine gun. Here is what you will understand by the end of this. How an army nearly twice the size of its enemy was surrounded, packed together, and slaughtered almost to the last man, and slaughtered almost to the 1,000. The Romans had 86,000, their enemy had 50,000, and still the larger force is the one that vanished. Now, picture yourself standing in the middle of that host, shields on every side. The line ahead surges forward. Would you have moved with it? Man on the smaller side was Hannibal Barca. His 50,000 were not one people. Gauls stripped to the waist, Iberians in white tunics, hardened African infantry who had followed him for years. Across the field stood Rome, 8 legions strong, the largest army the Republic had ever put in the field. Listen to it, and tens of thousands of feet churning the plain to red dust, bronze armor clashing along the banks of the river Aufidus, 2 armies breathing in the August heat. This was not meant to be close. Rome had the numbers, the pride, the certainty, and yet Cannae is still taught at West Point today, more than 2,200 years later, taught not as a Roman victory, but as the perfect trap. How does an advantage become a grave? That is where this begins. Rome had a flaw built into its own command. 2 consuls led the army, Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro. By law, they alternated supreme command day by day. One morning, the careful man decided. The next morning, the reckless one did. Imagine an army with 2 brains, taking turns. Picture the night before the battle. The command tent, lamplight shaking across tense faces, 2 men shouting over each other, while the centurions waltz outside pretend not to hear. Paulus wanted caution, the broken ground and no open plain. Varro wanted to attack head on now. The soldiers could feel it, the disagreement running down through the ranks like a crack in stone. Hannibal had no such problem, and he answered to no one. When your enemy has 1 will and you have 2, what do you think happens? And Hannibal had already been loose in Italy for 2 years. At Lake Trasimene, months earlier, he had trapped an entire Roman army against the water in morning fog and destroyed it. 15,000 dead in the mist before most of them saw a face. Rome was bleeding, and Rome was furious. In the city, crowds pressed the Senate for a crushing answer, not a delay. A victory, overwhelming by weight of numbers. Varro was their man. He believed that more soldiers meant certain triumph. So Rome raised the greatest army in its history and marched it south. Feel the month it happened in, flat heat of Apulia in high summer, sweat soaking through bronze cuirasses, every step raising dust oat that never settled. The decision to attack had been made. There was no road back. Hannibal did not stumble onto this battlefield, he chose it. That plain by the Aufidus was flat and open, perfect for cavalry, and his cavalry was both larger and better than Rome's, 1,000. He wanted the Romans crowded into a narrow band of ground, a place where their vast numbers would become a burden, not a weapon. Think about that. He was inviting the bigger army to come, and he set his eyes lined, so the Roman soldiers would face into the wind, the hot pool breeze, lifting red dust straight into their eyes, dulling their vision across the whole front. 3,000. A small thing, it would matter. That morning, Hannibal drew up a formation that men would still be studying 2,000 years later. It looked, at first, like a mistake. It was the opposite. Watch the line he built. In the very center, Hannibal placed his weakest troops and the Gauls and Iberians, the least armored men he had, and he pushed that center forward, bowing it out toward the Romans in a crescent that bulged into their teeth. On the wing, hidden back and level, he set his veteran African infantry, ordered to stand still, not advance. Hold. Now hear it, the Gauls, naked from the waist up, roaring, beating their long swords against round shields, a wall of harsh metallic noise rolling across the field. Romans looked at that baldric, at that bulging center, and saw an enemy about to break, so they threw their full weight into the middle, pressing, driving forward to shatter it. Exactly what Hannibal wanted. Every step they took was a step deeper into him. The center did not break, it bent. Under orders, the Gauls and Iberians gave ground one step at a time, falling back in control. The crescent that had bulged toward the Romans slowly curved the other way, into a pocket. The Romans, certain, now that victory was seconds away, poured in harder. And here is the trap, closing without a sword. Men crushed against men, so tightly packed they could no longer raise an arm. The smell of sweat and blood thick in the still, hot air. Screams muffled by the press of bodies. You have 60,000 men jammed into ground, meant for half that number, and the ones in the middle cannot even fight. They can only push. They still thought they were winning. Ask yourself. How long before winning turns into something else? Trap needed one more piece, and it came from the wings. There, Hannibal's cavalry under Hasdrubal smashed into the Roman horsemen and broke them fast. This is the moment most commanders get it wrong. They chase. Hasdrubal did not chase. He pulled his riders back, wheeled the whole force around, and drove it straight into the rear of the Roman infantry still grinding into the pocket. Hear it now. The thunder of hooves rising behind them, from the one direction no one was watching, where no danger was supposed to come. Front, part, both flanks, and now the back. This is the moment the double envelopment was complete. Ring closed all the way around. For every man trapped inside, there was no longer a direction that led out. There was no out at all. And picture one of them, a young Roman, maybe 18, in the middle of it. He turns his head, and everywhere he looks is the enemy. Ahead, the African Atrand veterans have stopped retreating and are pushing back. On both sides, the wings that never moved. Behind, the cavalry that just appeared out of the dust. He is not going to die fighting a man in front of him. He is going to be crushed. The noise is unbearable and yet strangely close. His own breath, the man against his shoulder, a scream swallowed whole by the sea of bodies, the heat of 40,000 crushed together at midday. He has a few seconds to decide, fight or go down on his knees. 1,000. There is no third choice. What would you have done in those few seconds? And come the numbers. Polybius, writing closest to the events, records about 70,000 Romans dead. Livy is more careful, 45,500 infantry and 2,700 cavalry. 2,700 cavalry, still for one day of killing done by hand. Hold it against the modern age, and Syra requires cider. This was a higher single-day death toll than the bloodiest day the British suffered at the Somme 2,000 years before the machine gun existed. And then, sound that follows every battle. Silence, the sun going down over the Aufidus, the Schaujoint gone. Only crows now, and flies, and the low wind over the dead. Uns. This was not a defeat. You recover from over a season. This was the near-total erasure of a generation of Roman fighting men. in an afternoon. By every rule of that age, Rome should have surrendered, but expected it. Hannibal expected it. He sent envoys offering terms and or ransom the thousands of prisoners he held. Senate did the thing no one predicted. It refused. No peace, no ransom. They would not even buy back their own sons. They forbade the word surrender to be spoken in the city. They banned public mourning past a fixed number of days, because there were too many funerals to allow the living to grieve. Think about the coldness of that decision and the iron in it. Their army, once gone, their allies were wavering. Hannibal stood in Italy, unbeaten, and Rome answered a catastrophe, not with terms, but with a flat, terrible no. That refusal is the reason you have heard of Rome and not of Nod. One of Hannibal's own officers saw it clearly. Hannibal, his cavalry commander, is said to have urged him to march on Rome at once, to strike while the Republic reeled, and Hannibal hesitated. Hannibal answered, line history never let go of. You know how to win a victory, Hannibal. A victory. Hannibal, but not how to use one. Whether the words are exact, judgment held. Hannibal won the battle and could not win the war. He stayed in Italy for years afterward, undefeated in the field, and slowly starved of the one thing Rome kept refusing to run out of: will. Feel the strange shape of it. Man who built the most perfect trap in military history never took the prize. The trap have won him. A flawless battle. A lost war. And here is why this still matters to you, sitting where you are. The double envelopment Hannibal drew on that plain became a template that outlived his empire, his language, and Carthage itself. Commanders chased it for centuries. In 1914, a German chief of staff named Schlieffen studied Cannae obsessively, trying to build a plan that would encircle our nation, an entire nation, the way Hannibal encircled an army. The dream of the perfect pocket and the annihilation of a whole force in a single stroke. It began here, in the dust by the Aufidus. Every officer who has ever tried to trap an enemy against his own numbers is, whether he knows it or not, whether he knows or not, borrowing from a dead Carthaginian. The men who died at Cannae did not know they were becoming a lesson, but they became the most studied one in the world. Strip away the centuries and one thing remains. Cannae was not decided by the men who died. It was decided by a decision. Varro's decision to attack on open ground into a formation designed into the soldiers in the pocket never had a choice. By the time they understood, ring was already shut. That gap between the man who decides and the men who way has never closed. It is still there in every command tent, every boardroom, every order given by someone who will not stand in the place where it lands. You have felt the small version of it, pushed forward by a crowd unable to stop and carried by a momentum you did not start. Now imagine that crowd is 86,000 strong, and the far edge of it is a wall of spears. The record keeps this. The 2nd of August, 216 BC. The record keeps this. 86,000 Romans took the field. The record keeps this. Libyans counts 70,000 dead by nightfall. Though the record keeps this. The Senate refused every offer of peace and every ransom and banned mourning past the appointed days. Record does not keep this. The name of the 18-year-old who turned in the press and saw enemies on every side. The record does not keep this. What he said, if he said anything, before the crowd closed over him. The record does not keep this. How many of the fallen still believed in their last minute that they were winning? Numbers survive. Faces do not. The plain by the Aufidus swallowed a generation and kept none of their names. Oh, go back to the start. 70,000 men in a single afternoon, and every one of them was pushed forward by the same certainty that the enemy in front was breaking. The way to safety was straight ahead. It was the exact opposite. The men who lived were often the ones on the edge who could still turn and run. Ones in the center, the confident ones, the ones at hardest driving hard into the win. Those are the ones who never came home. That is the cruelest lesson of Cannae. Sometimes the surge you trust is the trap itself. So, I'll ask you plainly, standing in that pocket, shields on every side, the line ahead surging forward. Would you have moved with it, or would you have been the one who stopped? Tell me in the comments.